So I'm going to jump right on. Let's call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. For the record, today is Tuesday, November 17th. We're in the City Hall. We're in the City Hall. It is Mrs. Pesky, Mr. Wright, and participating from Zoom is Mr. Boynton, Mr. Bushka, and Mr. Anderson. So we have our quorum before we begin the meeting. Could we stand on place? And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item 1 on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 20th. 29th. Second. Thank you. I do look up past who moved it. Oh, you threw your voice. So a motion by Mr. Wright, the second by Ms. Pesky. Questions on the minutes or the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
And an abstention for the record is Mr.
And
Bushka.
abstain also.
2 abstentions, Mr. Boynton and Mr. Bushka. Okay. Item 2, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the transfer of the budget amendment requests described in City Controller's memo dated November 10th, 2020.
So moved. Anderson.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Anderson, second by Mr. Wright. Questions on the motion?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Pesky.
Alice, the budget amendment for the 2021, the $175,000 from city real estate. Can you share with us your thought process on that and what it's covering or not covering?
There are no projects that will be compromised by that amendment. They actually, 100,000 of that was the transfer that we're doing from the 1920 year into the capital reserve for public works to support the roof project. The other 75,000 is a municipal revenue fund that we have. And if you recall, earlier in the year, we had transferred small balances out of inactive funds and moved those funds into that municipal revenue fund. And those projects will be covered through that fund.
Thank you.
Could everybody hear that? I know she's kind of far away. She takes socially distanced to the interview. Good. Are there other questions on the memo or the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to accept the Board of Education's financial reports.
So moved. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Anderson.
Bushka.
Second by Mr. Bushka. Questions on the motion or on the, I shouldn't ask about reports. I won't be able to answer the questions anyways. If there are no questions, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, I'll entertain a motion to accept the city's financial reports.
So moved, Mrs. Pesky.
Thank you, Ms. Pesky.
Second. Anderson.
And second by Mr. Anderson. Questions?
Have we actually received any money from the federal or the state government actual due to COVID? Any?
We have not gotten anything from FEMA yet, and we haven't gotten anything from the CRF. We did make our submissions, but we haven't gotten anything yet.
And we didn't get any denial, I mean,
No.
rejection.
No, we haven't gotten any final updates yet on it.
Other questions? I'll call this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved. Bushka.
I heard Mr. Bushka. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything to add, Alice?
Nothing, thank you, Mayor, other than to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, which I can't believe is happening.
Anything from the city clerk?
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Item 6, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members of the Board of Finance.
So moved. Anderson.
Mr. Wright, and I heard Mr. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, starting from the Zoom room. Anything this evening, Mr. Boynton?
The only thing I really want to add is thank you, Alice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Mr. Bushkin?
Just generally speaking, how is the pandemic's affecting our budget and our expenditures, et cetera? Maybe just a general quick overview.
So, and looking at Alice as I attempt to answer this, to date, I think that we have roughly 163,000.
About $175,000 worth of expenditures on the city side.
Right.
I haven't gotten any additional updates from the BOE on any of their expenditures. But then again, they were using the ESSRF funds to cover their costs. But beyond that, as far as activities go, there has been some savings in some of the departments, but not a lot of savings. Like for Park and Rec, they did the virtual Park and Rec activities, right, versus the actual physical activities. So I think people are just adapting to it, and I don't think that there's a lot of negative impact other than the cost of the maintenance and the cleaning of the facilities and any of the public safety expenditures over time.
So, were you able to hear Alice? I'll summarize. So 175,000 directly related to COVID response. A lot of that is, the overtime and cleaning supplies. And those expenses are being charged to that COVID line item that we established.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the Board of Education, we have been utilizing their resources, which was the ESSRF, is that what it is? Yeah, funds to cover expenses. And I know that with their budget performance reports, what they have been experiencing is their line items are running well under the projected budget amounts. And I know that there have been some discussions at the Board of Education's level with regard to continuing to monitor all of that. I mean, this can change in a month, if everything changes with a vaccine and, school goes back in and there are additional expenses that need to be incurred. But I think we're well positioned to respond appropriately, both on the city side and I think the schools are doing a great job, to be honest with you, under the circumstances. So no harm, no foul so far. Mr. Anderson, anything?
Just to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and thank you, Alice. It's been great working with you at least 7 years with me, and for all the time you've put in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Wright?
I'd also like to thank Alice, and unfortunately I didn't get to know you very well, but I think you're going to enjoy retirement.
Thank you.
I'd also like to congratulate everyone on the election, all the city employees. I haven't heard anything, so I assume everything went well and the turnout was very good, so I think it's very positive for the city.
I agree. Right, Ms. Biskey?
There was an article in the paper about the 2 loads of trash recycling being rejected and then we had to pay the tipping fee. Very personally concerned about the whole recycling concept. Doesn't get quite adopted the way we might hope in the city of Torrington. And what I noticed on social media after the articles in the paper and the discussion cracked me up about people using social media. So obviously they're savvy with a computer, whatever, and then saying they don't know what they can recycle or not recycle. And that there's plenty of places on the city website and then the connection to the state. So it's fairly easy to find out what you can recycle and what you can't. Though I will admit that I'm a fairly good recycler, but since things have changed with China not taking so much of the recycled materials and the point of caps or no caps and washing things. I mean, I didn't used to wash things, and I guess they used to accept things. So now, well, I think I'm doing a good job of recycling. I'm using a lot more water and soap and things to wash everything out. But that aside, feels like the city of Torrington perhaps should get involved with re-educating folks or educating them for the first time. We, just looking at the transfers in the paper, we got a lot of new folks in town, so maybe they don't know our systems. But and, I mean, some of the things that people were saying on social media, you know, things we've heard over the years of other people putting trash in their trash or putting trash in their recycling bins. That's been a perennial problem. But I'd be willing, as a citizen, to help out in any way. I know that there's a new transfer station and up in the northwest corner, Sharon, Salisbury, I think. And they have a whole packet to give to folks on what can and cannot be recycled. And they volunteer and they stand there with things, yes, no, so that you know by looking at what can and cannot be recycled. Is there a plan for the city?
So, I mean, your timing couldn't be more impeccable. I was invited to co-chair a committee with Deep Commissioner Katie Dykes. And this commission was to review any of the solid waste disposal. There were 4 working groups. It was the unit-based pricing, which, as we all know from our experience in looking at that a couple of years ago, that it is not as easy a pitch to our residents and our taxpayers. It included recycling, and included in that is understanding ways that we can be better at recycling to ensure there isn't cross-contamination, or that a whole recycling run is not contaminated and rejected. There was the food waste being pulled out of our waste cycle, because food waste is a tremendous amount of water and very heavy. So a lot of our tonnage is based on food waste that is thrown into the trash. And the 4th working group was working on ways to work with our industries to reduce the packaging. So this has been going on for the past 4 weeks. We have 3 more meetings coming up the rest of November and into December. And the thought process is that from all of these working groups, there'll be a recommendation to the state on how the state can assist municipalities, because it isn't just Torrington. You're right, Sharon's doing a great job, but they have a transfer station. People have a bag or their bins, they take it there, and there's that one stop and accountability, because you are delivering your own garbage. Here, we have, you know, a robotic arm that picks up the trash can that dumps it into the hauler's truck, and there's, you know, no way to really know what's being thrown in the trash or how to enforce better recycling or better trash removal. So, so one of the thought process in these working groups is, how do we make sustainable change across the state to reduce the amount of solid waste, to reduce the tipping fees that are being paid. And I think our tipping fees, I think $92 a ton right now.
92, 93?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
So, of course, I got tapped to co-chair the unit-based pricing. I think they either felt sorry for me or they thought they had a sucker on the line. And nothing has changed. Nothing has changed when it comes to the unit-based pricing. You know, the concern is the political fallout of it. You know, this is another tax. You know, how are you going to, how do you pitch this or sell this? And what do we know also is we can increase recycling, but if there's no market for the recycled material, are we really going to accomplish any real savings in all of this? So those are the topics that we have been discussing. Some of the other municipalities that are experiencing success have included separating glass out of their waste. Separating colored glass from clear glass. So a lot of work ahead of us. I was invited once again by Kristen Brown. We received a letter from Mira. Mira wants the municipality of the city of Torrington to consider piloting the unit-based pricing again. They're projecting that this can reduce or eliminate tipping fees and result in savings to the municipality. We see the letter. This letter came on November 2nd. That's how well timed your request to me is. That they believe that they can help us attain savings of about $994,000 a year. That would certainly $993,192 annually is what they think they can help us accomplish. I've had a number of conversations with our public works director who agrees that this isn't one of those, you know, one size fits all. One of these methodologies is the answer. It's really everything. We introduced the diversion of the textiles out of our waste stream by bringing in that pink bag recycling. There's a lot to be done. So where we have fallen on all of this is we want to establish an ad hoc task force, ad hoc committee. It would be staff and perhaps some representation from each of the boards, the city council and the board of finance, that can look at all of this over the next 3 or 4 months with recommendations that could be made during our budget cycle that will help identify, you know, clearly identify where are we falling short and what do we need to do to change behavior. Identify strategies with benchmarks. Where do we want to be? Do we want to increase recycling by 50%? Do we want to reduce all of solid waste, including recycling, which is really where you're going to save money, by 50% in year 1, by 100% in year 2, and then bring back a recommendation for implementation that can be built into our budget. So I'm hoping in the next, before the next city council meeting, that we'll have a little bit of a presentation that we can make with the establishment of this subcommittee or this ad hoc task force, and then set them to work and see what we can come up with. But I agree with you. I mean, it's distressing when even after all of the talk about unit-based pricing, pay-as-you-throw, SMART, I thought we would see a jump in recycling, a reduction in solid waste. There was no noticeable difference at all. So a work in progress. Grateful that that DEEP undertook this really very fully articulated approach to helping engage the municipalities on these working groups. The phone call that I was on yesterday afternoon, there were 140 participants in the call. So representation from 140 out of 169 towns, which I think certainly demonstrates how serious this is being taken. And at least half a dozen times in the call, what we heard was that this is a garbage crisis. So we're in the mix, trying to formulate some strategies. And in the next couple of weeks, we hope to have something more substantial to report to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and
Well, it's a fiscal with an F, and it's a physical. Protect our planet with a PH. We create too much trash.
you know, and some of those things we always discuss it during budget season. You know, should we be offering all of that bulk waste removal? Could we shift to a permit system? This way, if there's a question about garbage or bulky waste being put out at the curb, you know, was it generated from that residence? Was it brought in from another municipality and we're paying for some other municipality's waste disposal? I drive by one house every morning, and every few days there is a pile of furniture, and some of it looks like it could be recycled or could be sold at a secondhand store. Some of it looks broken and, you know, certainly not usable. But for the past 4 or 5 months, I think by now that house should be empty. There really couldn't possibly be anything left in that house based on the amount of trash they put out. So it does beg the question, you know, is this being generated, or are we becoming a, you know, a dumping place where it's taken away for free? Mattresses, same thing. You know, we disproportionately are disposing of mattresses. That also came up in this working group that we're in. So it's
I know that's something that we've offered forever.
Yeah.
And I think would be awfully tough to turn back.
it is.
And it's one of the things when people say to me, why is your mill rate so high?
Mhm.
And I speak of all the services that a citizen and taxpayer in the city of Torrington receives. The paid fire department, paid police department, and the trash. When people hear about what we do and pick up for free, it's not free, obviously. I know that twice a year when I pay my taxes, but that those kinds of things, and it's what keeps us a clean city. Except for the people that just continue to throw stuff out their car window. You know,
Or those, you know, neighboring communities where they do dump on the side of the road. You know, there's a few areas in the city where we know there's chronic dumping. And I say it all the time, I know it's not a Torrington resident throwing that old sofa in their, you know, in their truck to deliver it somewhere else to dump it on the side of the road. All they have to do is put it at the end of their driveway and it's going to be taken away. I agree with you. I mean, it is a problem. The more we hear from reporting from Mira and where we're going with regard to solid waste, the more concerning it is, the more crisis like this situation is. And it is, again, as much about packaging and how much are we receiving in the mail or delivered, you know, by some truck, you know, that also ends up in our waste cycle. So we do have a lot of work to do. And I was kind of delighted, you know, this is one of those, as if garbage can be exciting to anybody, but I was watching the report out from the food waste working group. And their whole PowerPoint presentation was prepared by Brian Paganini.
was it?
Of Climate.
It really seems to me that that's something that Torrington could take
Yes.
the lead on and it be an you know, homeboy makes good and helps the city of Torrington.
Yes, yeah, and I've met with Brian a number of times on biodigesters or anaerobic digestion and trying to find ways that we can incorporate that. When we were looking at full construction for the WPCA, that's when those meetings were ramping up to see, you know, how can we co-locate these facilities, because also a part of their anaerobic digestion included the sludge from the WPCA. So this is such a learning experience for me, and what we can do to, as you said, be more fiscally responsible and more physically responsible. I'm the Prius parked in the back, so like you, I'm a bit of a tree hugger. So these things have been important, and I think we're hitting the point where the rubber really needs to meet the road. With passage of the school construction and what we know in the next 4 years is that there will be debt service that will hit our books pretty heavily. And any way we can find to incorporate some of these kinds of strategies that will reduce our operating expenses so that we can take on that, I call this bad debt and the good debt. So try to get rid of some of the garbage debt and bring in the good stuff. So a lot of work ahead of us, but I think our goal is to get this underway before the end of the year and ask the committee to come back with recommendations before our budget is deliberated. Thank you. Oh, absolutely.
And I've been at this volunteering stuff in the city of Torrington for over 30 years. And for a great majority of that time, there's been Alice at watching my dollars, helping me watch the dollars. And it'll be very different not to know that I can pick up the phone, send an email. And I'm sure whomever fills little's, your feet are little, but they're very big shoes to fill. That person will make sure that person knows their stuff, but I'm not sure that person is going to know and love the city of Torrington quite yet the way you do. And thank you.
Thank you.
All those many, many years and all those many, many hours.
Thank you.
Thank you. And enjoy every minute of your retirement.
Thank you.
So I know I want to close on that note because it was so perfect. But I just want to add that for all of the things that you just said, for all the reasons you just said them, what I know about Alice is her heart is always in protecting the organization. So I'm holding on to her with my fingernails and developing a transition plan that I think will be in the best interest of Alice's goals, but also knowing that that is a very big position to fill. So I'll leave it at that, but it isn't like there's a hard, fast date that Alice is no longer going to be here. She is going to be working with us and developing not only the transition for the new comptroller, but also in developing any of those other projects that we've always had on the books, that like OPEB and fiduciary for our pension funds and those kinds of things. So our goal is to try to get all that stuff buttoned up, but button it up in a timely manner and not dictated by a cold hard fast date. So you might see her around a little bit, but that position will be posted this week, and we'll see what our net catches. All right, with that, if there are no other questions or comments, then I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Anderson?
Maybe Chris. So a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or adjourned? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor.